Okay, let's talk about hearing and making sense of things for a second. If you've watched my long and boring series on improvisation, you'll know that I divide the process into 4 phases: reception, identification, conversion, and execution. I want to talk about the relationship between the first two. Essentially, the question we're asking is, what are some ways to make sense of what we're hearing in our heads or on recordings? Well, I think there are 2 big ways we can hear melodies: by interval or relative to a chord or key. So, to hear things by interval is very absolute in that it has nothing to do with context. It is purely the mathematical distance between notes. So, if I hear this, I would say that's 3/4. It has nothing to do with the key I'm in, the chord I'm on, nothing. That's just 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. The second option is to hear things relative to a key or chord. For example, if I hear this phrase, sure, I could say that's a half step, a whole step, and a whole step, but I'm much more likely to say that's the beginning of a descending major scale, or that's 1-7-6-5. Make sense? So why am I pointing this out? Which method should we use? Well, as you've probably guessed, for most of us it will be both. The easiest way to hear and understand something will be dependent on the context. Generally speaking, the more symmetrical a group of notes or chords is, the more I would gravitate towards hearing intervallically. An example might be a vamp like this. I'm much more likely to hear that as 3 major 7 chords moving by whole step, as opposed to like 1 flat 7, flat 6, relative to a key. On the other hand, licks that fit more neatly in a key or over a chord might make more sense as scale degrees or numbers as opposed to pure intervals. So I would hear an arpeggio like this as 3, 5, 7, 9 as opposed to minor third, major third, minor third. Eventually, what you'll discover from toying with this idea is that you will find both ways helpful in sequence, and you'll start to hear things as both simultaneously. So a good example of this would be this classic diminished lick. When the lick starts, I might hear 2, 3, 2, 1 over a minor chord. But once the symmetry starts, I'm not continuing to hear like 4, flat 5, 4, 3. I'm just hearing the same thing up a minor third and continuing on, right? Cool. It's important to know that these 2 methods aren't in opposition, and in fact they often inform each other. So take this major sus4 major motion. With this phrase, I hear both 3, 4, 3, and movement by half step, up, down. Knowing both of those things adds to my confidence when I'm listening to something. I hear it, it checks both of those boxes, so I know that's what it is. So what's the takeaway? What's the advice here? Well, when you're transcribing and trying to figure something out, use both of these methods to help shed some light. You will need both of them for improvisation, so this is a good way to work on them. It's also a great method for double checking your work. So if you hear something and you think it's up a major triad, you can ask yourself, is the first interval a major third? And is the second a minor third? Because that's what makes up a major triad. Remember that there is no right way to hear things. One of these ways might be easier for you right off the bat, but I encourage you to strengthen both areas in pursuit of a more complete ear for improvisation. So give it a shot.